This is one of the worst aspects of living with the effects of early trauma. You keep losing friends, but you don't know why. And if you were abused and neglected in childhood, I can almost guarantee that you've had more than your share of ruined friendships. And that's what trauma in childhood so often does to us. Long term, it injures our ability to connect with other people for several reasons. You've probably been aware for a long time that connection is hard for you sometimes. And this is a terrible way to go through life, robbed of the most important things that make life happy. Love, belonging, people being there for you, having a tribe. And here's the thing, if the connection wound is there, it doesn't tend to get better by itself. It needs to be healed. And I'm calling you out that if friendships are not working out for you, now is the time to change that. It's so important for your life that you do this. And I'm not talking about the friendships where you made a trauma-driven choice to pursue friendship with someone who was cold or cruel or hurtful to you. I'm talking about the good friendships that may have been ruined by your past trauma and the way it made you see things and say things and do things that hurt the other person. And I'm going to teach you here what that looks like and how you can heal that connection wound so that you can be your real self and have better friendships that last and grow deeper over time. So let's look at a few of the most common trauma-driven behaviors that hurt friendships. And let's start with the first and most obvious one and the most destructive one, and that is lashing out. What's happening when you do that is negative emotions, which are normal, get oversized in your mind and they come bursting out without a filter. Now, how many times have you expressed yourself and then within a minute or two had that strange feeling that maybe your anger was coming out too strong? It's the worst feeling. And part of this behavior is just learned. It could be what you witnessed growing up with parents who raged, but lashing out also has to do with how your brain and nervous system handle negative experiences, how they handle stress, even little stressors. When you feel criticized or judged or treated unfairly or left out, there can be this burst of brain activity. There are studies where they've used an MRI to see what goes on in the brain for people who had intensely stressful childhoods. What happens now when they get stressed? What you'll see on the MRI image is on the right front cortex where emotions happen, boom, it's off the charts. There's activity over there, lots of feeling. And at the same time, reduced activity over here in the left front cortex where reasoning is supposed to be happening. And that's what it feels like, right? People who don't have that trauma injury going on would have, like, both sides would be up some, I feel strongly, but I'm thinking a lot about what to do. And so they're thinking, this hurts, but let's put this in perspective. I should ask some questions and pause a little bit here to find out why this is happening and see if I can mitigate it a little bit. That is a healthy, non-traumatized response. And I want you to remember that because part of healing is learning to be aware of your reflexive, trauma-driven reaction and pause your response to it, what you say and do, so that you can be intentional in that moment. You can create your own good guidelines for better ways of responding when someone upsets you, not stuffing your feelings, but choosing your words and the timing of when you'll express yourself. It feels artificial at first, but there are so many reasons to practice this ability to pause and use care when your triggers are active. Because with childhood PTSD, you get hurt by something that a friend says. It's like a 5-alarm fire is in here. You get a surge of emotion and your instinct is to fight it, to make it stop or to run away or to, hide. It feels like the emotion is being caused by the other person in those moments. But in reality, your reaction, which is getting this huge surge of intensity from your trauma wound, is exaggerating reality for you. It's happening in here. So yes, people do and say hurtful things, but with childhood PTSD, something, this big feels like it's this big, and you're getting all the body signals, adrenaline, cortisol, a feeling of being gut punched or even panicked, and you're feeling it as if it's going on right now. So you're going into fight, flight, freeze, fawn mode. And when you lash out, that's the fight mode. And we all know how this feels to be on the receiving end. It hurts. It feels unreasonable, and it feels crazy making. And you want to protect yourself. So when you react like this, you'll get people pulling away from you. And in a moment, I'll teach you how to prevent that. All right, sometimes it's not overt anger that you're expressing. It's a negative emotion. It's usually anger or feeling threatened, but it's dressed up as concern. I'm concerned about you. I'm only saying this because I care, or I'm just speaking my truth. Do you ever say stuff like that? You say things that you think are just true or caring or clarifying statements, but your words are loaded. They're full of prickles, and it's because even though your childhood wounds stop you from seeing it in the moment, your words are loaded with hurt, and it's a hurt that's directed at the other person. What is it? It's the same criticism and judgment and unjust feeling that sets off your triggers. So before you even know what you're doing, your brain is like, you hurt me, I hurt you right back. And your traumatized brain thinks that it's protected you, but it's totally messing everything up. It's actually, triggering the other person. Don't confuse lashing out with setting boundaries. Good boundaries keep you out of situations you resent in the first place, not 100% of the time. Boundaries are good. It's not lashing out. It's often why we lash out is we didn't honor our own boundaries, and now we feel defenseless. So your boundary is not just like an argument about boundaries. That's not a boundary. It's when you just know that you have it. You know it, you maybe say it, and you step away if it comes to that. That's the boundary. Instead of walking around exhausted and alienating people with conflict and drama, you're fresh, you feel good about yourself, you've avoided the drama, you are handling things beautifully, and you're ready for an actual good friendship. Doesn't that sound good? All right, another way that negative emotions come in and wreck your friendships is you abandon people. And this is that same thing where your traumatized brain is trying to protect you by shutting people out, not speaking, not responding to them, giving them the cold shoulder, all because the reaction in here is more than you can handle. And it feels like they did it to you, and maybe partly they did, but trauma wounds are characterized by that intense emotional reaction to things that is out of proportion to what's going on. That is emotional dysregulation. And I know a bunch of you are going to say, but so-and-so is a narcissist, and they were abusive to me, and I can't let them get away with it. But I'm talking about friendships here, people you want in your life. So if you're feeling a little too much emptiness where friends should be in your life, this could be one of the reasons. But let's come back to drama, because that's a friendship ruiner all by itself. Now, sometimes your anger or your defensiveness, it's not directed at the friend in front of you, it's directed at someone else, and you're having a lot of drama about it. And your trauma wounds aren't healed yet. If that's the case, it can be really hard to keep drama out of your life or to stay calm about life's ups and downs because trouble just seems to find you, and it's upsetting. And one way I've described it is trauma is like a house where all the doors and windows have nothing in them. So cold air and wind and branches and mud, they're just getting in. And there's like people you don't know over here on the sofa, and everything's a mess, and there's cows on the roof, and you don't know how any of it got in there. When drama is happening, you can hardly think of anything else. It's all you can talk about. Oh my gosh, why does this keep happening? How did the cows get on the roof? Why are there people all over the sofa? Why don't we have windows? I'm freezing. And we all know what it feels like to be around someone who's overwhelmed by their own drama. I'm saying all the cows and windows metaphorically, but that's what it's like. Just everything is out of control and you're mystified. So we know what it's like when somebody has that. You can't reach somebody who's in that state, and they're usually way too loaded up with their own stuff to care about other people. So the thing to remember is that drama is the natural byproduct when a person is out there living life, which is good, but thanks to being raised maybe in a dysfunctional family and maybe not having such a good red flag detector, drama is getting in. So when you're going through drama, how are you going to not talk about it or have bad days? It happens, and this can be healed, But just for the record, some of the people who have left your life, even though you wanted them to stay, they left because there was too much drama. I know that's true for me. The people may stick around when drama's running high, or usually other traumatized people are the ones who will stick around. Maybe they're even attracted to drama, or they feel safe around somebody who's equally kind of going up and down like that, or who have so much of their own drama they're not really aware. They're not worried about what's going on with you. Either way, it's not a good dynamic, and it's exhausting. All right, the next thing that ruins relationships. Here's a different kind of symptom that pushes friends away. And it's when you have too many rules for other people, which is a control thing about what they can and can't say and do when they're around you. And this is another thing that happens when you don't have a good understanding of what a boundary is. Like, I don't hang around with people who are drinking alcohol, for example. That could be someone's boundary. Because if that's you, it's you knowing what you need and deciding who you will and will not hang out with. But if your boundary is confused, or you don't have the power to communicate it well, or you're with someone who wants a drink more than they want your company, you may find yourself trying to control another person's drinking, arguing with them about it, trying to legislate the he said, she said story of how you got here. Getting triggered, which, who are we kidding, can happen to everybody with childhood trauma when they're under stress. But getting triggered will often drag you into that argument, trying to control someone else rather than respect your own boundary of like, yeah, I choose not to be around this. You know what that means? That means you either decide to accept the situation for that evening, or you get up and you take your leave. You can decide later if this is a friendship that you want to keep, but staying calm and collected in the moment, no lashing out, no shaming the person, no drama, no attempts to control them. You're like flowing water, just peaceful, flexible, powerful, just navigating around, strong. And this leaves your choices about the future much more open. You may not like everything about your friends, but there's often room to have your boundaries and let them be their wonderful selves. Sometimes not. But having that ability to be flexible with people, that's really what healing looks like. The freedom to set boundaries or to avoid people if that's our choice, but the freedom to be flexible and kind under different circumstances. We want that range of choices in front of us, and then to choose, to have the presence of mind to choose well. So what can you do to contain your trauma symptoms while your healing is still in progress and still open up your life to better and better friendships? The first and best thing you can do is to learn to calm your triggers from the inside out, rather than trying to make other people protect you from getting triggered or being hard on people when you do get triggered. It's not your fault you have trauma, but it's not their fault either. So the power to change things is actually here in your own brain and emotions and thinking. That's where change is possible, even if it's not instant or easy right now. But you absolutely have the power in any moment, any interaction, to pause and soften down and listen and be attentive to what's going on so that your negative emotions can be over here and your friend's feelings can be over here, and you can decide if you're going to communicate those emotions. If there's something you need to communicate or express anger about or set a boundary around, it can usually wait a minute or two. That little cushion of time between trigger and reaction is your friend. And it helps too to keep your focus on the values and behaviors that you're trying to hold for yourself or grow into. And maybe it's kindness, maybe it's a more accepting attitude, maybe it's encouragement for other people, maybe it's to stop hanging out with people like this. But there's this little moment of time where sometimes you'll be able to realize that you want to step away. And no, you don't have to criticize them or judge them on your way out the door. They get to be them, and you get to be you, even if being you means not being in that friendship. Now, having the wounds from abuse and neglect in childhood can mean that on some days, or for an hour here and there, you might get very stuck in your negative emotions and thinking. And this is one big way that we might be pushing friends away. There's a time to talk with friends about it, but there's a way that the intensity of traumatized thinking can make you talk a little too much maybe about it. good friends need your time and attention too. So force yourself, if you have to give them the floor sometimes. Everybody needs a safe way to express what's bothering them. And a good way to do that before you start venting onto another person is to funnel those thoughts and feelings out of your mind and onto paper. Maybe you're a journaler. I use a technique that's been much more effective for me to get the most of the negative emotions and thoughts resolved with just this little bit left afterwards, after I do the exercise. It'll sort of clean up a head full of worry and anger into a few more tidy issues that are so much easier to express to someone that's hearable for them. When it's not like a million things, when it's like 3 things that you want to talk to your friend about, they're more likely to be able to hear it and respond to it favorably. And then it's not loaded up with all my darkest fears and resentments. It's something they can respond to. And I teach that technique in a free course that I call the Daily Practice. Hundreds of thousands of people have taken it, and I lead free Zoom calls. My team also, we have them every week. And if you take the course and learn the technique, you'll be invited. You'll get an email to tell you when they are, and you can come join us. We use the writing technique, we follow it with a meditation technique, and then I take questions afterwards. I'd love it if you could come to that. So I've put a link to that right here, and you can click on that and learn the technique, and I will see you very soon.